Okay, so we are still in numerical methods, and we are done discussing with bracketing methods and open methods. Now let's go to finding the roots of polynomials. So roots of polynomials naman tayo ngayon. Is still in the system of nonlinear equations. So yung method na gagamitin natin for this one will be the Mullers method. It is based on second method, which constructs at every iteration a line through 2 points on the graph F. Okay? So, si second kasi, if you remember, pabago-bago tayo ng x value. Okay? So, pabago-bago tayo ng x value. And we only have 2 points here. Whereas sa Mueller's method, we need 3 initial estimates of our x value. Okay? So, this method finds complex roots of the function, which makes it more useful than the others. Yung Mueller's method kasi is ginagamit niya si quadratic formula, and we all know that quadratic formula contains a radical expression, and when we have a radical expression, ibig sabihin we have two roots there, which is the positive and negative, and it can be real, both complex, or both either one of them is complex. Okay, so yun yung pinagkaiba ni Mueller's method sa ibang methods in solving systems of linear equation. So, we have this initial estimate, si x sub 1, x sub 2, and x sub 3. With these initial estimates, ito yung tatlong to, we can find si y sub 1, y sub 2, and y sub 3. Okay? So, si x sub 1, y sub 1, x sub 2, y sub 2, x sub 3, y sub 3 points pass through the parabola y is equal to y sub 3 plus c sub 2 times x minus x sub 3 plus d sub 1 times x minus x sub 3 times x minus x sub 2. Okay. So, yung gagamitin natin na formulas will be this one. C sub n plus 1, d sub n, and cs. Okay, so kailangan muna nating hanapin to isa-isa before tayo mag-proceed sa ating iterative formula. So, our formula is x sub n equal to x sub n minus 1 minus 2y sub n minus 1 all over s plus s squared minus 4d sub n minus 1 y sub n minus 1. Okay, so this part is the quadratic formula. So if you're going to change this with a, b, and c, kagaya nung sa quadratic formula natin, this will be, okay, so this will be, ito, y sub n minus 1 is the c. This should be b. Tapos, yung a natin is ito, si d sub n minus 1. However, ito yung follow natin na formula. Okay, so note, the sign of the denominator must agree with the sign of s. So, kung ano yung sign ng s natin, dapat yun din yung sign ng ating denominator. So, we should be carefully solving for or simplifying for this one sa loob ng radical sign. Okay? So, now let's try an example. So, find the root of y equal to f of x equal to x raised to 6 minus 2, starting with x sub 1 equal to 0.5, x sub 2 equal to 1.5, and x sub 3 equal to 1.0. So, we have a table here. Plug lang natin yung mga values ni n, ni x sub n, and ni y sub n. And we are given x sub 1, x sub 2, and x sub 3. So, yung n natin will be 1, 2, and 3. Okay? So, yung values niya will be, this is 0.5, this is 1.5, and this is 1.0. Now, we are going to plug the values of our x's dito sa ating function, which is x sub 6 minus 2. And for 0.5, when x is equal to 0.5, our function is equal to negative 1.9844. When our x is equal to 1.5, our y is equal to 9.3906. And when our x is equal to 1, our function is equal to negative 1. Okay, so we now have a value of our y sub 1, y sub 2, and y sub 3. So we are now going to look for x sub 4. So, paano natin kukunin si x of 4? From these formulas. Okay, at n equal to 4. Okay, nasa 4 na tayo. So, what will be x sub 4? Okay, so una nating hahanapin is C sub n. C sub n natin will be C sub 4 since n is equal to 4. So, C sub 4 is equal to, ayan, yung formula natin is yn minus 2 minus yn minus 3. So, yn minus 2, n natin, n minus 2, 4. 4 minus 2 is equal to 2. So, y2 minus yn minus 3. So, 4 minus 3 is 1. So, y1 all over, ganun din sa baba, which is x sub 2 minus x sub 1. And, substituting the values of y sub 2 and y sub 1, tapos si x sub 2 minus x sub 1 dito, this will be equal to, y sub 2 natin is 9.3906 minus negative 1.9844 all over, oh my gosh, sorry. All over our x sub 2 is 1.5 minus 0.5. So we will get a value for our C sub 4 equal to 11.375. The next thing we should look for is yung value ng ating C sub n plus 1. Since our n is equal to 4, so this will be C sub 5. And the formula will be y sub n minus 1. So 4 minus 1 is 3. So y sub 3 minus y sub 2 over x sub 3 minus x sub 2. Okay, so we are going to look for C sub 5. C sub 5, we will have the formula of y sub 3 minus y sub 2. Y sub 3 minus y sub 2 over x sub 3 minus x sub 2. So this will be equal to, what is our y sub 3? That is negative 1. Y sub 2 natin is 9.3906 all over our x sub 3, that will be 1.0. And our x sub 2 is 1.5. So we will get the value of C sub 5 equal to 20.781. Okay? So, meron na tayong value ng C sub 5 and C sub 4 and C sub 5 natin. Now, for our D sub 4, this will be equal to C sub n plus 1. So, siya C sub 5. C sub 5 minus C sub 4 all over x sub n minus 1, x sub 3 minus x sub 1. Okay, so yun yung gagamitin natin na formula for our D. So, D sub 4 is equal to C sub 5 minus C sub 4 all over x sub 3 minus x sub 1. Okay, so tama yung formula natin. Yes, tama. And we are going to plug yung mga values. So what is C sub 5? That is 20.781 minus our C sub 4. That is equal to 11.375. What is our x sub 3? That is equal to 1.0. And x sub 1 natin is 0.5. So we will get a value of D sub 4 equal to 18.812. Okay. So we are going to look now for the value of S na gagamitin natin. So, the formula for our S sa problem number 1 will be C, or iteration 1 is C sub 5 plus D sub 4 times X sub 3 minus X sub 2. Okay? So, yun yung gagamitin natin. So, this is iteration number 1 pala. Okay, so iteration 1 tayo. Sa ating S is equal to C sub 5 plus D sub 4 times x3 minus x2 based from the formula. So, plug natin yung values ng C sub 5 natin. That is 20.781 as well as si D sub 4. That is 18.812 multiplied by x sub 3, that is 1.0 minus x sub 2, 1.5. So this will be equal to 11.375. So we now have values for C4, C5, D4, and S. Now the next thing we should do is to find the value of our x sub 4. So this is equal to x sub 3 kasi x sub n minus 1 minus 2y sub 3 all over s plus the square root of s squared minus 4 d sub 3 and then y sub 3. Okay? So, plug na natin yung mga values. This will be equal to x sub 3 natin is 1. 1.0 minus, what is our y sub 3? That is negative 1. So, 2 times negative 1 over s natin is 11.375 plus the square root of our s, that is 11.375 squared minus 4. Okay, so minus 4 times our d sub 3 or d sub 4. Okay, I think I might have mistaken dito sa formula natin. So, i-correct ko lang. This should be d sub n minus 1. Okay? Or d sub n. Oo, d sub n. Tama pala siya. Dito pala sa kabila ako nagkamali. Ito, that one. That should be d sub 4. Okay? So, d sub 4 natin is 18.812. And our y sub 3 is equal to negative 1. Okay? So, let's first try to solve kung ano yung value nung nasa loob ng radical sign natin. Kung yung makukuha ba natin is a real root or a complex root. So, I tried to solve, makukuha natin will be a real root. And since positive yung s natin, gaya ng condition natin nung nasa unang slide or pangalawang slide tayo, this one, sign of the denominator must agree with the sign of s. Okay? So, since positive si s, yung gagamitin natin dito will be positive. Okay? So, if you are going to type this on our calculator, we will get a value of x sub 4 equal to 1.0779. So, ito ngayon yung ipa-plug natin sa ating table. Okay, so 1.0779. Okay. So, ngayon, to find y sub 4, plug natin si 1.0779 dito sa ating equation. And we will get negative 0.4315. Okay, so let us compute for the relative error. And in computing for the relative error for this problem, we have the formula. Relative error natin is the absolute value of our error. So that is equal to x sub 4 minus x sub 3 over x sub 4. So ito yung formula na kukunin natin. Yung nakuha mo ngayon minus sa previous na nakuha mo na value ng x divided by the x value na nakuha mo ngayon. So, this is equal to x sub 4 natin is 1.0779 minus 1.0 all over 1.0779 multiplied by 100%. So, times 100 pala to. Okay. So, this will be equal to 7.23%. So, medyo malaki pa yung error natin. So, kailangan nating ituloy. Now, let's continue for C. Okay. So, meron na tayong C sub 5. Ito na yung gagamitin natin for C sub 5. The next na i-compute na lang natin is si C sub 6. Okay? So, let's proceed. C sub 5 at n equal to 2. This is the second iteration. Okay? So, C sub 5 natin as computed kanina is 20.781. Okay? And then we are going to compute for C sub 6, that is equal to y sub 4 minus y sub 5, y sub 3 I should say, and then x sub 4 minus x sub 3. So we are going to plug the values. So y sub 4 natin is equal to negative 0.4315 minus y sub 3 is negative 1 all over x sub 4 is 1.0779 minus x sub 3 is 1. So this will have a value of 7.2978. Okay? Now we are going to compute for the value of d sub. N natin is 5. So this should be d sub 5. This is equal to c sub 6 minus c sub 5 all over x sub 4 minus x sub 2. Okay, so this will be equal to, so mag-base lang tayo sa formula natin. So c sub 6 is equal to 7.2978 minus c sub 5, 20.781 all over, what is our x sub 4? That is 1.0779 minus x sub 2 natin is 1.5. So we will have a value of 31.9436. And computing for S, formula will be C sub 6 minus plus D sub 5 times x4 minus x3. Okay, so plugging in the values, we have 7.2978 plus d sub 5, that is 31.9436 minus 1.0779 multiplied by 1.0779 minus si x sub 3 natin, that is 1. So computing for this one, we will have a value of S equal to 9.7864. So, compute na tayo ng x sub 5 natin. Formula will be x sub 4 minus 2y sub 4 all over s plus square root of s squared minus 4 times d sub 5 y sub 4. Okay, so since positive yung s natin, this should also be positive. So, plug na natin yung mga values. X sub 4 is equal to 1.0779 minus 2 times y sub 4 natin is negative 0.4315 all over yung s natin, that is 9.7864 plus the square root of 7864 quantity squared minus 4 times our d sub 5 is 31.9436 multiplied by negative 0.4315 si y sub 3 natin. Y sub 4 I should say. So x sub 5 natin will be computing for the value we have, that is equal to 1.117. Okay, so now we are going to compute for the relative error. So that will be equal to x sub 5 minus x sub 4 over x sub 5 times 100%. So this is equal to x sub 5 natin is 1.1170 minus 1.0779 all over 1.1170 multiplied by 100%, and this is equal to 3.5%. So, medyo bumaba na yung ating relative error. However, hindi pa siya close to 0%. So, let's still continue our iteration. So, we are now at n equal to 6. This is our third iteration. Okay, so given na tayo ng c sub 6. So, this is equal to, ano yung c sub 6 natin kanina? 7.2978. So, we are now going to compute for c sub 7, and this is equal to Oh, I forgot, hindi pa natin na-compute si y. Okay, hindi pa natin na-plug dito yung mga values. So, at n equal to 5, our x sub 5 is equal to, na-compute natin kanina, that is 1.1170. So, this is 1.1170. So, if you're going to plug si x value natin dito sa function, we will get y sub 5 equal to negative 0.0577. Okay? So, now, let's proceed sa ating third iteration where n is equal to 6. So, meron na tayong value ng c sub 6. So, kukompute na lang natin is c sub 7. So, the formula will be y sub 6 minus y sub 5 all over x sub 6 minus x sub 5. Okay, so this should be y sub 5 kasi ang n pala natin is 6. So, 6 minus 1, that should be, or 6 minus 2, that should be y sub 4. Okay? Oh, sorry. Should be y sub 4. Tapos ito. Okay, sige. This is y sub 4. Tapos y sub 3. And then x sub 4 minus x sub 3. Okay, so na-compute na pala natin c sub 6. C sub 7 will be y sub 5. I'm sorry. Oh my gosh. This should be y sub 5 minus y sub 4, tapos x sub 5 minus x sub 4. If you are going to plug the values for this one, this is equal to negative 0.0577, which is yung na-compute natin kanina, minus our y sub 4, that is negative 0.4315, all over our x sub 5, that is 1.1170 minus x sub 4, 1.0079. And we have a value for c sub 7 equal to 9.5601. Now we are going to compute for our d sub 6. And this is equal to c sub 7 minus c sub 6 all over x sub 5 minus x sub 3. So this is equal to 9.5607 minus 7.2978 all over our x sub 5 is equal to 1.1170 minus x sub 3, that is 1. So our d sub 6 is equal to 19.3359. Now we are going to compute for our s, that is equal to x sub 5. Okay, or sorry, S is equal to C sub 7. Okay, C sub 7 plus D sub 6 times X 5 minus X sub 4. And plugging in the values, we have 9.5601 plus 19.3359 multiplied by our x sub 5, that is 1.1170, minus x sub 4 natin is 1.0779. And we have a value of S equal to 10.3161. So it is again positive. So yung susundin natin na um, value for our denominator will be also positive. So we are going to compute for x sub 6. This is equal to x sub 5 minus 2 y sub 5 all over s plus the square root of s squared minus 4 d sub 5 y sub 5, or d sub 6 y sub 5. Okay? So, plug na natin yung mga values. This is equal to 1.1170 minus 2 times negative 0.0577 all over our S, that is 10.3161, plus the square root of S, that is 10.3161 squared minus 4 times our d sub 6, that is 19.3359, multiplied by y sub 5, that is negative 0.0577. Okay, so computing for this one, our x sub 6 is equal to 1.1225. And for the relative error, ayan, relative error natin will be x sub 6 minus x sub 5 all over x sub 6 times 100%. And this is equal to 1.1225 minus 1.1170 all over 1.1225 multiplied by 100. Our relative error is equal to 0.49%. Okay? So, medyo close na tayo to 0. But, let's try the next iteration kung bababa ba siya or mag-stay na siya sa 0.49%. Okay? So, at n equal to 7. So, this is now our fourth iteration. So, meron na tayong C6 which is equal to C7 which is equal to 9.5601. 9.5601. Now, for our C8, that will be, wait lang. Since nakuha na natin si x sub 6 na 1.1225, so plug ulit natin sa ating table. 1.1225. If we plug this sa ating function, that will be equal to 0.0004. Okay? So, yun yung gagamitin natin na y sub 6. Okay? So, yung formula natin for this one will be equal to y sub 6. Hindi. Since n is equal to 7 natin. Oo, tama. Y sub 6 minus y sub 5. All over x sub 6 minus x sub 5. And this will be equal to, what is our y sub 6? That is 0.0004 minus y sub 5 natin, negative 0.0577 all over x sub 6 natin is 1.1225 minus x sub 5, 1.1170. And this is equal to 10.5636. Now, computing for our d sub 7, that should be equal to c sub 8 minus c sub 7 all over x sub 6 minus x sub 4. Okay, so this is equal to 10.5636 minus 9.5601 all over 1.1225 minus 1.0779. And D7 is equal to 22.5. Okay, so we now compute for S, that is equal to C8 plus D7 times x sub 6 minus x sub 4 or x sub 5. This is equal to C8 natin is 10.5636 plus D7 natin is 22.5 multiplied by our x sub 6, that is 1.1225 minus our x sub 5, that is 1.1170, and our S is equal to 10.6874. Positive ulit, that's why positive yung magiging operation natin sa denominator. And now let's compute for x sub 7. X sub 7 is equal to x sub 6 minus 2y sub 6 all over s plus the square root of s squared minus 4 times d sub 7 times d sub 7 minus multiplied by d sub 7 y sub 6. Okay, so plug in na natin yung values. That will be equal to x sub 6 natin is 1.1225 minus 2 times y sub 6 natin, that is 0.0004 multiplied by our s, that is 10.6874 plus the square root of 10.6874 squared minus 4 times our D7, that is 22.5 multiplied by our y sub 6, that is 0.0004. Okay, and computing for this one, we have a value of x sub 7 equal to 1.1225. Okay, so plug na natin siya sa table. So our x sub 7 is equal to 1.1225. So same tayo ng ating y sub n kasi same sila ng y sub 6. So by just looking at our table and the values of x sub 6 and x sub 7, we can say na yung relative error nila is 0% since parehas sila. So we now stop our iteration. So that is how you solve how you look for the roots of polynomials using the Mullers method.